Hi, everyone. This is Kathleen. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to give everybody about another minute, and then I'll get started with our presentation on dolphin communication. I don't know if, Kel, you'd like to add anything to the welcome before we get started?
Hi, I'll just add a hello. I'm joining today from beautiful Bethany. So while we may be under lockdown and social distancing and all of that stuff, I get to look at the beautiful ocean. So it's okay. We're doing good here.
And we'll share that view vicariously with you. How's that, Kel?
Excellent. And I'm seeing some questions coming through already, which is great. I'll be monitoring them, so I'll periodically insert one if it fits with what Kathleen is covering, and then otherwise I'll save them for the end, and I will ask them aloud to Kathleen, and then we can have a nice discussion.
Thanks. And Kel, if you have those questions that you want to ask while I'm giving a talk, I may not be looking at the chat, so feel free to insert them as you see fit.
Yep, will do.
Okay. Well, I guess with that, we will get started. And oops, have to get back onto the PowerPoint. There we go. So today I will be chatting with you about dolphin communication, and we're going to look at how dolphins share information through a variety of signals. Quick reminder, as we've had on our screens, we are recording, so keep your videos and microphones off, at least until the end, unless you want to be recorded. So I'm using this slide as a quick visual reminder for where you can find information on the DCP website about dolphin communication. For those of you who might not be familiar with our website, you have the tabs at top. If you go to dolphins, the first drop down under that tab is Dolphin Communication, where you can gain quite a bit of information there. And also you can go to the latest buzz and go down to the Dolphin Pod. And episode 10 of the Dolphin Pod is focused on dolphin communication. So when animals are grouped in time and space, they can interact and behave with one another. If individuals could only encounter each other once, then they wouldn't have the chance to get to know each other. But when associations between individuals persist over time, then individuals can repeatedly come into contact with one another, and that means they can establish relationships. And repeated interactions allow for different relationships to develop. For example, you can have cooperative foraging, you can have mating coalitions, you can have more dominant or subordinate individuals. And once these relationships and the relationship types are understood, then observers, such as scientists, can begin to describe the social structure of the group, whether, for example, it's fission, fusion, polygamous, female bonded, and more. So the social structure of a group is based on an abstraction of the nature, the quality, the patterning of relationships. And relationships are built on a series of interactions between individuals. Scientists can study these interactions at the group or the individual level. And what you study will depend on your vantage point as well as your research question. So you could examine or investigate group vocal behavior, or you could look at individual behavioral exchanges. And I've focused on the latter. So today our discussion is going to focus on how dolphins communicate as individuals, what types of signals they use, and maybe a little bit of information about how and when they use that information. So something to remember about most dolphin species, at least the 33, 34 oceanic ones, is they mostly reside in fission-fusion societies. So you have small groups with various different individuals who do certain things like traveling, playing, or chasing different individuals. And these small groups might then come together to form a larger collective to engage in some activity, for example, foraging. And then once that foraging is done, this larger group will separate into either the same smaller groups or different ones. And when these groups form or split, information is shared. And dolphins use a variety of modes of information. And for the moment, as we are all social distancing, you don't have necessarily individuals right next to you, but you can think about your small family or your friend groups that will come together at some point for school or other social activities. And then once those activities are done, you're going to return to your smaller groups. So humans also are in fission-fusion society, just like dolphins. Well, social animals must share information or communicate in order to be social, and dolphins are no exception. Animals produce a vast number of signals in a variety of modes. So you can see with this video, you have a dolphin that's fast swimming, whistling, and producing bubbles. It's using several modes of communication at once. The different channels or modes include visual, olfactory, taste or gustatory, acoustic, and tactile signals. These sensory modes are used in air or water, which is the medium in which the signal is transmitted. And the mechanism of that signal production can be anatomical or physiological. These signals for dolphins, get through that. These signals for dolphins function similar to those that are used by other social animals. For example, during aggressive or subordinate interaction, for mate attraction, for parental care, for play, and for more. And when you can understand the signals and look at how they're used, then you can get an idea of the potential functions for those signals. Well, before jumping into the details of those modes of communication in dolphins, it's important to get straight exactly what communication is. And quite simply, communication is the transmission of information. This is a broad definition that covers many of the ways that the word communication is used, and not just in terms of living organisms. For example, modern technology is based on communication protocols that allows web browsers to communicate with servers. And here today, it's allowing my laptop, my computer, to communicate through the internet with all of you. Each of these systems relies on a structured communication protocol that allows for information to be transferred between systems. Well, animals also rely on structured communication systems to help transmit information. And the ability to communicate is ubiquitous in the animal kingdom. All life is able to communicate, both with individuals of the same species or with individuals of different species. And the methods used for communication are varied and complicated, and they're not limited to vocalizations. So if you look at this video, ants share a large amount of information with other members of their colony through chemical transmit trails or pheromones. That's how they share information, or at least one of the ways that they share information. Similarly, bees are known to communicate complicated information about the location of flower patches by engaging in an intricate dance. And this dance conveys information about the distance and direction to tasty pollen-rich flowers to other bees. And you can see that in this video where the direction of the flower patch in relation to the angle of the sun has been communicated. Well, communication doesn't always have to be thought of as in these complex terms. Sometimes the messages are much simpler. A large bull moose, for example, grows enormous antlers that convey a relatively straightforward message. I'm big and strong, don't mess with me. Or if the receiver is a female, maybe that message is mess with me. Well, what then is language? In brief, human language is a system of combining small meaningful elements into larger elements, phonemes, words, sentences that allow humans to convey infinitely complex amounts of information. After many years of study, scientists now think that some animals might actually possess small parts of this system within their own communication systems that might allow them to generate some forms of basic human-like language communication. However, nearly everyone, or at least in the science community, agrees that only humans are able to learn and use language to the complicated extent that we know it as language. And every language has rules that govern how it's spoken and how it's used. There's grammar, there's syntax, there's semantics, there's letters and syllables, etc. So too, communication has a structure that includes a sender, a receiver, and a signal. And because every individual is different, even when of the same species, the message that's sent by the sender with a signal is not always exactly the same as the meaning that a receiver might get from that same signal. And that's where miscommunication and manipulation come into play. But those are topics for another day. We cannot know every language. Well, there are some people that may have many languages, but we can't necessarily know every single language with people of different communities or cultures. That said, we can still communicate with people of different cultures and different languages. And we can also communicate with different species. For those of you that might have a dog, you'll recognize this posture. This is the play bow or the play posture. And if you see a dog doing this, it probably means it wants to play with you. If I show you another picture and I say, you see the ball here, which gives you more context, you know that the open mouth and the sort of, well, not really aggressive, but the sort of open mouth exchange and expression and the side tail might suggest that there's a little bit of aggression, but you see the ball and you know that the context is more one of play. So this is where context is also important because it may modify signals depending on how it might be used. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. Scientists often define animal communication as follows, or at least the communication definition that DCP uses is that communication involves the provision of information by a sender to a receiver, and then the subsequent use of that information by the receiver to determine how and whether to respond. And the signal is the vehicle by which the sender and the receiver share that information. And both the sender and the receiver rely on signals to meet the individual challenges within their group setting. So signals are tools that have been specialized over time to be informative. They're salient to the interactions between individuals, and they're adapted for optimum transmission in their environment. So today, I'm speaking to you, I'm using slides. You can't see it, but my hands are gesturing. And that's all information that I'm sharing with you. So during this webinar, I'm the sender, and you guys hopefully are all the receivers of this information. So we're going to get now into some of the modes of communication that dolphins will share between one another, how they'll share information and how they'll do it. And these 5 sensory modes that I'm going to talk about are very similar to the sensory modes that we have as social animals or just as animals in general. So we'll start with the smell and taste or olfaction and gustatory senses. And it's unlikely that dolphins actually transmit olfactory signals. Those are signals that might involve the sense of smell. And in the left photograph here, you see a dolphin, a dusky dolphin, breathing through its blowhole. And the blowhole, the relaxed position of the blowhole is closed. So it's open only at the surface when they come up to take a breath and go down. So it's likely that they have no real sense of smell that they're using. There is a possibility that dolphins might have a sense of taste. If you talk to several different dolphin trainers, they'll note that the dolphins in their care often show food preference or fish preferences. And dolphins also may release chemicals into the water from their feces or their urine that might transmit information about their arousal levels or their reproductive status. And additionally, there's some new research out and I've chatted with Jason Bruck at Oklahoma State University, and his work with Vincent Yannick has suggested that dolphins might actually have a chemical signature in their urine. That is, that they can recognize each other based on their urine as well as based on their signature whistles, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And we have anecdotal evidence to support this idea because we've seen a couple of young dolphins when they're about 3 months old, where other dolphins in the group are actually checking them out. And there's a beak to genital behavior that we see where the dolphins are checking other individuals out. And there's also whistles going on with this behavior. So it's possible that other dolphins are learning some of the new individuals to their group by hearing the whistles and matching those to a chemical signature. There's still more research to do on this topic, but we do know that there is a chemical signature in the urine of some dolphins. So the next signal mode that I'd like to chat about is visual. And although we as humans generally tend to think of communication as occurring with sound, thanks in part in reliance to our reliance on language, much communication happens within the visual modality. And visual displays can be simple or complex. Movements and postures are often highlighted in species with conspicuous color patterns. And in clear water, these visual signals provide dolphins and other marine mammals a close range alternative to acoustic signaling. So you can have displays or vocal displays could inadvertently alert predators or prey to a dolphin's behavior or presence. But if they're doing something visually, it might be less of a notice to a potential predator or prey. To give you an example, though these two adult female Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins near Mirkura Island are slow swimming with their calves in infant position, their seeming synchrony could maybe be a simple signal to other dolphins that they're together, or maybe that they're in rest mode, or it could have something completely different in mind. But it's an idea of a simple behavior, or a representation of a simple behavior that could give you some idea to what's going on between these individuals. Some other examples of visual cues include everything from gestures to movements to coloration. Disruptive coloration patterns, the stripes, the spots, the bold colors, have likely evolved for social signaling, or maybe to deceive the prey or predators. And pelagic species, those groups that live offshore, tend to live in large interspecific schools, multiple species, and also seem to possess the most complex color patterns among the small cetaceans. And that complexity could be due to species or individual recognition, as well as potentially to social signaling. Another example from our research would be the Atlantic spotted dolphins, which actually, when they're born, have no spots, and as they age, get more and more spots. And this information quickly conveys details about the dolphin's age within the group. So in the lower right hand of the slide here, you'll see two young dolphins in the vertical round photograph, and then an adult spotted dolphin in the horizontal photograph. And many color patterns like counter shading and the distinctive black and white markings of killer whales are likely used for camouflage or to help when hunting. However, some of the markings are also help species to quickly tell the difference between animals belonging to the same or different species, especially within those multi-species groups. Some species of dolphins, like the rhesus dolphins, which is in the center photograph there, accumulate scars and bite marks after a lifetime of fighting with other animals. And the amount of scarring that an individual might have could either reflect that you have a veteran fighter who's pretty strong, or depending on the number or amount of scars, you could have somebody who's low on the totem pole. So when you look at postures, overt actions and gestures, such as the open jaw threat displays or leaps, tails, flaring their pectoral fins, S-shaped postures, and a majority of the behavioral visual displays that are expressed by dolphins allow dolphins to modify some of the signals that they might use. So posture and behavioral signaling can also be used to synchronize actions among individuals or groups and coordinate their activity. This video that you've seen is Atlantic spotted dolphins, with some of the dolphins flaring their pec fins in an attempt maybe to make themselves look a little bit larger. And what you don't see on screen is in the upper right-hand section of where the video might be, are dolphins facing off at these four dolphins. And so this might be similar in analogy to cats or birds who fluff out their fur or their feathers to make themselves look a little bit bigger. So you have a variety of signals that can work together. We're going to come back to a bit of this type of video later when we talk about some of the vocal signals that dolphins might share. Dolphins often release bubbles from their blowholes when they're making whistle sounds. Can you guys hear, Kel, can you hear this video?
I cannot hear it.
Okay, well, sorry that you guys can't hear it. This dolphin is whistling. I can't whistle, but what whistles sound like to you guys. I thought that the video was all working with audio, and we'll have to try to fix that later on with some of the acoustic slides. But bubbles in general, these videos are meant to show you some of the bubbles that are going on. And the bubbles seem to be an extra communicative signal, or they help modify some of the whistles or maybe some of the actions that individuals are using for dolphins. And the bubble streams, clouds, rings, etc. can be pretty conspicuous. And some of the bubble clouds that we've seen might either act as a barrier, an air barrier to some sounds, or they might be used as a potential bit of a threat to make themselves look a little bigger. So if you see this video, you'll see some bubble clouds in the lower right. And dolphins are able to produce these bubble streams of bubble clouds in a variety of situations. And while these bubbles are primarily visual signals, some of them may have a distinctive noise that can be heard over short distances between individuals. Some dolphins in Australia have been observed using sponges as a foraging tool, which is not really a communicative signal per se, but the Amazon river dolphin, or boto, has been seen carrying rocks and sticks in its mouth, apparently as a visual display meant to wow some potential mates. Males will collect objects and often swim out of the water holding the rocks or sticks in the air before slowly sinking back into the water. And they carry these objects, or they make these displays to signal potentially to females that she's observing a hunky, strong male on her hands that she might consider is worth mating with. A little bit of tidbit information for you. What does the Amazon river dolphin and the prairie chicken have in common? If you had audio, I'd play the Jeopardy sound, but I won't leave you hanging. They are both lek mating individuals, meaning males and females will seasonally come together to a similar place to display and find a mate, which I think is pretty cool. So visual displays are useful for short-range communication, and because visual signals are usually in close proximity, these displays can readily become tactile signals. And extensive contacting occurs in dolphins during play, sexual, maternal, and social contexts using the rostrum, the flippers, the fins, the flukes, the abdomen, and indeed the entire body. So perhaps one of the most important modes of signaling in the dolphins world is this use of touch. And dolphins have skin that is quite sensitive to even the lightest touch. Dolphins are known to rub their bodies against each other and to engage in intricate rubbing behaviors using the pectoral fins. And they'll also rub the bodies of their friends, moving their fins over the face, the side, the peduncle. And sometimes they seek out rubs by positioning their bodies under the fin of another dolphin. And most of this type of tactile behavior is thought to be an affiliative contact, meaning it's used more in non-aggressive but more social situations. Not all contact behavior, however, is friendly. During aggressive encounters, dolphins can body slam one another, they can butt heads, they can ram one another with their rostrums. And as seen in this video, they can also smack one another with their powerful flukes or tail. So, play that. So the power stroke of a dolphin swimming is the upstroke of the tail. And when they hit one another, it probably hurts, probably sends a pretty distinctive message. And this type of behavior is one that we would consider more aggressive in nature. And dolphins are considered a more what I would consider a socially complete animal, in that they have affiliative interactions and they have aggressive interactions, just like other social animals. So here's an example of a jaw clap. I'm going to show you the video, and then I will make a sound here that will give you an idea of what the sound is like. And this, just to set it up, the dolphin back here is an adult female, and this is a subadult male. This was recorded during an eco tour off Mikura Island in Japan. And this dolphin is going to jaw clap twice at this dolphin. So the sound that this animal is making is basically just opening and closing their jaws, and it sounds kind of like that. Hopefully you guys all heard me sort of making that sound, and I did not do that with my jaws, believe me. But that's about what the sound is like, and it carries quite far, and it's quite loud. It's definitely an aggressive, non-vocal interaction between dolphins. So vocal and non-vocal signals are used by dolphins, and those constitute the acoustic communication between individuals. And you can think about this, for example, clapping your hands versus yelling bravo. clapping of your hands is a non-vocal signal, whereas yelling bravo would be a vocal signal between individuals. And this video actually has no audio because it's at distance, but it gives you an idea of another non-vocal signal that has an acoustic component. And that is a tail slap. And dolphins, indeed all the different cetaceans, will create tail slaps, which are considered mostly an aggressive interaction between individuals, but I have also seen dolphins when they're playing slapping different body parts on the surface of the water, and that's their pec fin or breaching, or which is the whole body, or just their tail slaps. And indeed, other non-vocal acoustic signals include tail slaps, pectoral fin slaps, those jaw claps I showed you, possibly breaches, the bubbles, and maybe some chuffs, which is an extended harsh exhalation between individuals at the surface. And the non-vocal in this sense is that these are any sounds that are produced using organs that are not part of where dolphins produce their sounds, which is behind and below the melon. For humans, another example is screaming would be a vocal sound. And again, clapping your hands or stomping your feet would be a sound that is not vocal, but a sound that you produce to communicate with different individuals. Jumping out of the water also creates this percussive sound. Those are some breaches or aerial displays, and this happens when the dolphin lands back on the surface of the water. And here you have a Hawaiian spinner dolphin that's doing one of these elaborate aerial displays. And these displays can be viewed both from above and below the water, depending on the water clarity. And they may be used to convey information about the direction of travel, the location of food, or maybe general excitement levels. And they may also serve to reinforce social bonds, or they may be useful, for example, in dusky dolphins, in herding fish as well between individuals. So one of the things I also wanted to point out to everyone on the call today is that the DOSITS, or Discovery of Sound in the Sea website, is a really good resource for details on all kinds of marine mammal sounds, not just dolphins. And you'll find some details. We have a couple of links here that you can go directly to see, for example, sperm whale vocalizations or beaked whale clicks, and some killer whale vocalizations. What I'd like to do is go into a bit of detail about what we know about dolphin vocal signals. I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear these. I'm not 100% sure that you will, but these sounds will be available in the video once we upload this to the DCP website and to our YouTube channel. You'll be able to hear these. So dolphins produce two kinds of vocal signals, pure tones and pulsed sounds. And pure tones take the form of, for example, chirps and whistles. A chirp is basically what it sounds like, which is a short type of sound. I'm not a great dolphin mimic when it comes to chirps and whistles. I hope you'll all take that into effect. The whistle is more, if you guys can whistle and you can whistle to yourself, you can hear some of that. You can also hear some of the whistle in this, hopefully at some point. Screams and other continuous sounds are also called frequency modulated, or FM sounds, and that means that the pitch of the sound changes with time. It can be rising or falling. And the way we study whistles and other vocalizations from dolphins is by creating a spectrogram, which is a visual or representation or picture of the sound. And we log the frequency on the y-axis and the time on the x-axis for whistle spectrograms. And you can see that the dark line right here would represent a whistle, and you'd have a first harmonic right up here. And then the vertical lines in this particular picture would be clicks or echolocation. There's been a lot of study over the years looking at whistles and attempting to catalog and categorize whistles from different study populations over time. We can provide you more reading on that topic. We've looked a bit into that, but one of the most interesting examinations into dolphin whistles for a few different groups has looked at, I'm trying to get my slide to go forward here. There we go. Has looked at signature whistles, or whistles that dolphins might use that would be similar to names between individuals. And this is the most language-like aspect of dolphins' natural communication systems. It is a unique whistle that the dolphins of some species develop in their first year of life, which they use as a contact call. So when dolphins are separated in distance or time and they want to come back together, they'll either use the signature whistle of another dolphin, or they'll produce their own signature whistle between individuals. And it's possible for humans, and probably other dolphins, to recognize these individual dolphins based on the unique characteristics of the signature whistle. And also sometimes dolphins will even copy or imitate the signature whistles of other dolphins, which might mean that they're trying to get the attention of or address these other individuals. And so there are several papers out, many of them recently by Stephanie King or Vincent Yannick, and I'm going to play this whistle, which has the first 3 whistles.
We're not getting any audio, Kathleen, so your mimics of the sounds are delightful.
Thank you. And I wish that I could mimic the whistles, but I am physically unable to actually whistle. And it is one of my handicaps, but I am actually playing these so that if you do want to go right to this spot later, you can listen to the video of this call. And I will do my best to mimic all of the other sounds that we have coming up, because I am better at those sounds. But I do caution those of you who look at signature whistles as similar to what humans have. And even though they are the most language-like thing we've found in dolphin communication, they're not really a good example, for example, of a functionally referential signal, or we're learning more about how they might be used. We do see signature whistles used specifically in the context of maintaining contact between individuals in a group when they're out of visual range or out of space. So one side note that I wanted to make, and we'll get through there, is we don't yet know all of the details about these specific communication units used by dolphins, at least vocally. We do know that they use touch, they use all the modes of communication, the acoustic, the chemical, visual, etc. And we're learning more about the signals that they share, but there's no indication that dolphins have conversations like humans do. And there's a difference between a conversation and communicating, and I provide that information here. Signals are definitely bits of the tools, I should say, that a variety of social animals and other individuals can use to share information. You might even be able to access the emotional states of other individuals, and signals also allow continued contact. But they're different to conversations, which are intentional, and they require cooperation and turn-taking. We do have a really interesting paper. If anyone's interested in looking at the juxtaposition between conversation and communication, let us know by email, and I'd be happy to share that with you. It's by one of our colleagues. That said, unlike whistles, dolphins produce pulsed sounds, which are brief sounds called clicks. And so take it like a hinge of a rusty door that's being opened, and it would be a so that's sort of a click train between individuals. These are usually classified as either echolocation clicks or burst pulses. Echolocation clicks are used for sonar. It's generally when a dolphin will make a click and then wait for an echo before it produces the next click. Echolocation, we don't think is necessarily a main form of communication between dolphins, but it is a method for dolphins to investigate the world through sound. Echolocation and sonar are terms that are used synonymously, and it allows the dolphins to create sort of a mental picture of what's going on in the world around them. We're not sure how they perceive that mental picture, so I tend to say that it's creating a view through sound, but we're not sure exactly 100% how they perceive that in their brain. Burst pulses occur when dolphins release clicks so rapidly that it's not believed that they're able to gain any sonar information from the returning echoes. And these clicks, when they're used in burst pulses, are as high as 200 clicks per second, even up to 1700, 1800 clicks per second. And these signals, these clicks, are thought to be communicative and not echolocation. And these would be a squawk or a burst, like a ah, ah, something like that between dolphins. And these types of burst pulse calls or squawks are used when dolphins are excited or angry. They, and I use that term loosely so that they're just sort of in an aggressive mood. They might be fighting between different individuals. And it's thought that these particular calls can convey information about a dolphin's emotional state as well as expressing its position potentially in a social setting. So dolphins, indeed all animals, live in an ever-changing world, and reactions and responses to environmental and social variables must be flexible and adaptive for survival and reproduction. And understanding signal behavior and subsequent receiver responses provides a window into non-human minds, indeed into dolphin minds, as well as to the social complexity of other species. And observing and examining the social and ecological differences among individuals and groups will help us elucidate the mechanisms underlying the use and evolution of different signals that are used to exchange information among individuals, that is, to communicate between individuals. So as a reminder, before we take questions, I hope that there are some that Cal has lined up. You can find more information about dolphin communication and actually about echolocation and other topics on the Dolphin Pod from DCP, as well as through our website content. And each week we'll be holding our various different deep dives as today, as well as some DCP dolphin lessons. Next week we'll have some programs, one on Tuesday and one on Thursday as well. So, as a reminder, there's many different ways you can learn information, get information from DCP or about DCP, and many different ways you can join in with DCP. So, with that, Kel, do you have any comments or questions?
Excellent. I thought I would open up the questions by first giving you my attempt at echolocation. So this is my dolphin click train.
Okay.
I don't know if you could hear that.
Could you do that again?
It is my party trick.
Oh, cool. I hope folks heard that.
So we got a few questions. Thank you. And you can keep typing those. I'll be monitoring.
I'm going to add my video in as well, just in case.
Nice to see your face.
Thank you.
I will be kind of focusing on the communication questions that came through first. And then if we have time for the more general questions, we will get to those. And if we don't, I will try and get you the answers via another venue at another time. So Kathleen, we had a question about the potential impact of ocean noise that humans are creating and how it might impact the dolphin's ability to communicate. Someone asked, like whales, would you say that it is possible dolphin communication will be or already has been impeded by noisier marine and freshwater environments as a result of barges and other sound-producing industries?
Well, I think it's hard to say a broad response to that. I think it depends on the location where the study group is. Certainly, I think that anthropogenic or man-made noise is an issue in all parts of the ocean. And I think it is something we being the collective group of scientists have shown that ship noise does impact, for example, right whale calling between individuals, and it does affect some of the larger whales. I do think it's going to impact some of the dolphins, but I think it's going to be on a smaller scale. And I'm not readily familiar with studies that might have been done on dolphins in general in terms of anthropogenic noise on specific groups, except for a few studies that have been done to look at vessel noise from ecotour groups and how it might have impacted dolphin whistling behavior. And there were some impacts there. I'd have to double check my literature to find the paper on that to get some details. I do think it's an issue, and I think that we can address the anthropogenic noise, what we put in there, but I think that's going to be something that every boat operator is going to have to do, as well as large ships. I hope that
Thank
answers
you.
the question mostly.
For those of you who don't already know him, we actually have DCP's own Dr. Justin Gregg also on the call. He was able to join us today. And so I'm going to throw this one at him.
Okay.
Kathleen, of course, you can chime in as well. If another dolphin is nearby, could it receive the same mental image, if you will, the same echo, even if they did not emit the echolocation? Oh, I have to unmute Justin. Sorry. Technology.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yes, that absolutely does happen. That's called echoic eavesdropping. And that has been theorized to be possible and shown in experiments to 100% be possible. So the way it would work is if a dolphin echolocates in the water, so it sends a sound wave out in the water that will bounce off of something, and then the returning echo is what that dolphin uses to get sort of a mental image of the thing it's echolocating on. And if another dolphin happens to be close by, it will be receiving that exact same echo. And it doesn't necessarily need to have sent its own echo out to still get that same sonic image information in its own mind. So if one dolphin is next to another dolphin and listens to its echolocation, it will be hearing / seeing / getting an echo image of that same thing that it's being echolocated on. So that's pretty weird stuff. It'd be like if I was standing next to Kelly with my eyes closed and she was looking at TV and I could still just watch the same TV. That'd be weird.
Sneaky dolphins. Thank you. That was a great question. Kathleen or Justin, I would say, or both of you. Our next question is, are you saying that there isn't evidence of dolphins having an actual language?
I can say for what I've seen, correct. I have not seen any evidence that dolphins have nor need to use something like human language. That doesn't mean that research hasn't shown that they can understand the components of human language. In fact, some of the research that Lou Herman's lab did at the Koala Basin Marine Mammal Program in Hawaii showed that dolphins actually can comprehend the components of human language, but we have no evidence that they actually use that in their day-to-day communication. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Justin.
No, that about sums it up. Some of it depends on how you want to define language, because you could sort of define any communication system between animals as its own language. But the sort of technical term would mean that thing that humans do when we speak, and that would include using these complex generative grammars and having the ability to encode a ton of different semantic information. We can talk about anything. We can talk about the color green or what you had for breakfast and that sort of thing. And it seems that there's no animal communication system that has that same span of things that it can talk about, including what dolphins might be communicating to each other, as far as we know.
Thank you. And there's Kathleen just mentioned a researcher in Hawaii, and that was Lou Herman, Dr. Lou Herman, that to reference, correct, Kathleen?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was just a quick follow-up question. I hope that I get this question right. The question is about if we are interpreting something as communication. So that's the basic assumption, I think. Have you seen any differences between communication of synchrony with affiliative touch versus without affiliative touch?
We have sort of. We have a paper that is, I believe it's on the DCP website, or you can get it from us, that one of our students looked at, which was Janin Evans-Weiland. And she looked at vocalizations, whistles and clicks in association with pectoral fin contact. And what she, and pectoral fin contact, as I think I mentioned, is what we consider more of an affiliative contact between individuals. And what she noticed is that when a dolphin initiates a contact with its pec fin to another dolphin, anywhere on the other dolphin's body, it will whistle more than click or not. I don't know if she looked at whistle more than not whistle, but because she was comparing the vocal behavior, so not vocal behavior to not vocal behavior, if that makes sense. So if I said that correctly. But what she also saw was that when a dolphin initiates a contact as taking its body and rubbing it into a pectoral fin, so kind of like if your dog came up and nudged your hand and wanted to be petted, then that dolphin actually emitted more echolocation or more click trains than whistles. So she found a difference there in terms of the type of vocalizations, but we didn't look specifically to see if it was click trains with only a certain number of clicks per train or whistles of a certain contact pattern. The contour pattern on a whistle is what that dark line looks like in the spectrogram. And so she just looked at whistles generally. So we haven't looked at the level of detail to see if it's a specific type of whistle or not. That said, there's also been some research from Mats Amundin and some of my colleagues in Sweden, Christer Blomqvist and Mats Amundin, who looked at dolphins during play and dolphins during more aggressive interaction. And they found that when a whistle accompanied some of the echolocation that was produced, that was more indicative of a play situation versus no whistle being more of an aggressive situation.
Thank you. I hope that that got to your question. One we get a lot, and we got in our chat window, has to do with communication between humans and dolphins. So with a research group name like Dolphin Communication Project, you can imagine we get that question a lot. So whether the specific question is whether or not we think basically humans and dolphins will be able to have a conversation in our lifetime. And so I can give a short answer in that it's just not what we focus on. We leave that to other researchers, and we think that there are kind of enough more pressing questions that can be asked that can hopefully inspire people to care more about the dolphins and their ocean home without needing to have a conversation with language. Kathleen, I don't know if you want to add anything to that too.
Well, I would just add, I agree 100% with you, Cal. And I would also say that there's a difference between the conversation and communication. And so we have several people, or I've observed several people over the years who can communicate with dolphins by various gestures or signals, hand signals, etc. And many trainers do that. But it's not that they're going to sit down by the side of the boat or the side of the pool and have a conversation. And for me, I'm more interested in studying dolphin to dolphin communication. I want to sort of eavesdrop on them and watch how they're sharing information.
Next question. Do groups of dolphins exhibit any repeated sound patterns that might be analogous to the songs of humpback whales?
I haven't identified or looked into the literature about groups of dolphins producing calls that might be similar to humpback whale songs. The only exception sort of related to that might be killer whales, as the largest dolphins have been confirmed to have dialects. I didn't go into detail on that in this particular talk because I wanted to keep things to a shorter time period. But there are family groups of killer whales that produce calls that have a dialect by family or by small group. And we do know that killer whale groups are matriarchal and that they are family groups. They've been genetically confirmed, at least for the resident killer whales. And so they do have calls that will have dialects that you can, and even human observers can tell the difference between these groups just acoustically, not with having seen them and looking for visual ID. I'm not familiar though of any group vocalization like humpback whale song. I'm not sure, Justin, if you're aware of anything, or Kel, if you're aware of anything in the literature.
I'm not, and with a sort of personal experience here with the dolphins off Bimini, it's certainly nothing that we've recorded here. We have on any given observation recorded repeated whistles where one individual seems to just repeat the same whistle over and over for that particular event, observation, but not something that seems to be across the whole community or that carries over through the whole season.
Right.
Interesting question. Thank you. This one, someone shared a personal experience of having the opportunity to scuba dive with trained dolphins. I'm assuming bottlenose dolphins, just based on the odds that that's what they were. This trained dolphin who has experienced being in open water with scuba divers came to him. The dolphin's body touched the scuba diver's head and actually disrupted his regulator and his mask. And he always wondered if the dolphin was being playful or if we thought the dolphin was trying to send him some kind of message.
Well, it would be tough to answer that, not having been there and not knowing the context around the whole situation, because there are a variety of signals that can be used in different contexts and might have different meanings in terms of, you know, when people wave, when we wave our hand, we're waving hello, we're waving goodbye, wait up. It depends on when we're doing that. It's just one example. So I think if you felt you were having a good time during that interaction, that maybe it was the dolphin getting a little close and maybe either accidentally dislodged your mask and snorkel. I think to me, I've seen interactions, etc. And I'm, you know, if you're playing and swimming around and roughhousing a little, and you know, maybe it was an accident. I think there's many different possibilities, and not having been there, I'm not sure I'd weigh in on what I thought was the best. But if you think back to your interaction, you might have an idea of whether somebody was being mischievous or it was an accident.
And I would say add to that, because dolphin communication can take on or utilize more than one mode, the same way I can use my language to tell everyone that I'm doing good today, and you all can take that message and you can interpret it that I'm good. But I can say that same message, I'm good today, and I can change the tone of my voice and the posture of my body and what my facial expression is, and I can completely change that message that I'm sending to you. And we're humans, so we understand that. The dolphins can utilize multiple things at once, but if we don't understand all of the nuances, it's hard for us to pull out what the accurate message is. It's unfortunate that you couldn't hear all of those sounds, but sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it is, you know, you may not be a dog trainer, but you know when a dog is really mad and baring its teeth and growling at you. So there are times where I think the dolphins, if they really are upset, really are aggressive, you're going to get the message.
Very true.
This one is a little bit of a deviation from communication, but we still have a couple of minutes. So is there a time of day in which certain behaviors seem to be more prevalent? And if so, why would this be?
For the dolphins that we've studied, I have not identified any diurnal patterns in their behavior. I haven't been looking for diurnal patterns, so I haven't set up a random set of observations throughout the entire day period for when we're collecting the data. And we have done some few observations at a couple of locations in the evenings but we see vocal behavior in the mornings, in the evenings, during the day. The same with other behaviors. Dolphins don't sleep the way we would sleep, so they can be active throughout the day, and they can also take rests throughout the day. Slow moving behavior, slow interactions between individuals. There are some species of dolphins that do have diurnal patterns. For example, the Hawaiian spinner dolphins are more nocturnal, and you'll see them resting in the shallow bays off of Hawaii for the groups that have been studied there during the days. And then at dawn and dusk, they'll get more active, and they will feed offshore on the deep scattering layer that has come closer to the surface during the evenings. So the diurnal or potential patterns of activities that might be seen could be related to the ecology of the animals. It could be related to their foraging behavior. It could be related to any other number of possibilities. But for what we're doing for our data, I haven't seen patterns in behavior or patterns in signal exchange that are related specifically to the time of day. I think the same could be said for our studies at Bimini, Cal. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, but it's always kind of a possibility, a thing to look into if you're able to collect data at different times. So sometimes we have a feasible research question, but we don't have a feasible way to collect the data that would be required to answer it, or at least shed light on it. One thing that we were able to do here in Bimini is set out a passive acoustic monitor. You might see that with the initials PAM in research. And we were able to just kind of anchor this cool piece of equipment out and leave it. And we left it, did a few different sessions, about 2 weeks at a time each, and it just recorded sound, no video, but just sound for that 2-week period. And what we found was that we could hear dolphins at all times of day. So we didn't have additional data like exactly how far it would record, because that has too many variables with it, things like that. But it at least told us that the dolphins off Bimini, it's not like they're completely out of the area for one chunk of time of the day, or there but completely silent. We could hear them at all parts of the day, of the 24-hour day. Cool question. Thank you.
And those recordings were in 2-week chunks. So at least for the seasons that we deployed the SM2M, which is our equipment, that's when we were recording, and it was different seasons too, in different years.
Yeah, and it was very unnerving to anchor something to the sand and
leave it.
We got to go check on it a few times during those 2-week periods, but that was the first time I ever had that experience, and it was definitely outside my comfort zone to leave that and hope that it would be there when we came back. I think we have time for one last question, also a deviation from communication, but it's whether or not the Bahamas government is doing anything to ensure that there aren't too many boats coming into the area where the dolphins are. And I don't mind fielding that one since I'm here in Bimini.
Please do.
And Cal. There is a Marine Mammal Protection Act here in the Bahamas. It does not give a lot of guidance toward private vessels and limits to what they can do in terms of seeing the dolphins. So we try and use our platforms, our website, our interactions with folks on Bimini at least, to encourage people to give the dolphins space, to operate as if they were in the U.S. U.S. flagged vessels need to consider the U.S. Marine Mammal Protection Act. And by collecting our data, by being here year after year, we've been here in Bimini since 2003, 2001 really. Yep. We have an archive of data, a baseline that we can funnel into scientific publications that can again be funneled to the Bahamian government as appropriate. And so we hope that our data, our monitoring of the dolphins will allow the government to have some sound scientific data on which to base their regulations and their rules.
And just to add to that, since even before DCP was officially a DCP, we've been applying for and obtaining permits from the Bahamian government, from the Department of Marine Resources, to conduct our research. And so we, as Cal indicated with our reports, we are required to file annual reports and provide copies of our publications and our details. And so for our research, we are permitted through the Bahamian government, which means that the vessels that we use and how we collect our data is also registered with the government.
If anyone thinks of questions afterwards that, oh, I wish I had asked that,
Yes.
Up on the screen, you can still see our social media and our email address. So feel free to shoot us questions. As Kathleen mentioned, our next webinar is on Tuesday. That one's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And that's going to be an introduction to photo ID. So who's who and how do we tell dolphins apart? It's geared a bit more toward elementary audience. So if anybody has kids in their lives or teachers in their lives and you want to spread the word, we appreciate it. But I do think anyone would enjoy it. So you're welcome. The one catch, and those of you who were here in the first couple of minutes of the talk, we are setting a password for our elementary talks. So if you want to join Tuesday's webinar, just reach out via email or social media. I'll get you the password and then you'll be able to join in.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone. And yep.
And our masks are available online now. I didn't do my hair before this, so I put this on and then realized it would be a good way to bring it up.
It's hard to see it with this, but I have my hoorag right here. So very cool.
So they make good headbands, they make good face coverings. They're not medical masks, and they are, just as of this morning, available on our website now. So you can purchase one if you'd like.
And later today, our program will be up on YouTube and on the DCP website, so you can go and listen to the sounds and watch the videos again. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.